Okay, good evening. Good evening, everybody. It's 6:30, April 17th, 2023, and I'd like to call to order the regular full BET meeting for April. First order of business, call to order and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2, requests for budget adjustments. We have 2 routine applications.
First is ED4 for $1.1 million from the Board of Ed. This is an interim appropriation for special ed out-of-district tuition and settlements. And then the second one is FD3 from the Fire Department, a $10,000 transfer to cover healthcare costs for volunteers.
And is that a motion? I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Any objections to accepting this with unanimous consent? Approving this with unanimous consent? Okay, these pass 12-0-0. Thank you, Nisha. Next item, still in item 2, are non-routine applications. And the first one is ED5, Board of Ed, $545,000, an interim appropriation for Havemeyer flood damage and overtime. I'd like to note that we have joining us, thank you, Superintendent Tony Jones, or Dr. Tony Jones, Blaze, Christina from the Board of Ed, and Mr. Watson. Thank you. You want to do the,
So did we, did you move these? You moved this?
I will move it.
And I will second that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, can we get the committee report?
And so the committee report from the Budget Committee. Mr. Leviton and Mr. Watson explained how the Saturday, February 4th, 2023 incident in the Havemeyer building occurred due to a pipe joint failure on the 3rd floor as a result of an original construction issue attributed to lack of joint soldering, causing heavy flooding and damage below. Damaged spaces had to be tested, abated, and treated due to the presence of lead paint and asbestos. Due to the activation of a monitor in the building's fire department system, the fire department responded and witnessed flooding. Mr. Watson explained that the chilled air unit that failed was installed over 25 years ago. They have no knowledge of who installed the HVAC units, which have been slowly taken out of service, as there are no valve shutoffs. This unit was the last in the Havemeyer building. The interim funding requested is to cover the building damage restoration costs of initial response, rebuilding the boardroom, equipment, furniture, and abatement costs. The lower level space will have basic refurbishment, but not specifically for a print shop. The Budget Committee voted unanimously to appropriate $545,000 as a non-routine matter.
Thank you. Any additional discussion?
Yeah.
Karen and then Laura?
Through you to either Blaze or whoever, the estimates that were given, are these estimates that were provided by your contractor? I'm trying to find them. Oops, right there, okay. And are these firm numbers, or are they estimated costs? Do you anticipate that they're going to be, are they actual numbers that were given to you, or are they just estimated?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Good question. These are numbers 2 and 3 are basically the actuals for the asbestos abatement. The rest of them are estimates from Wernert and they are hopefully conservative estimates.
And have you gotten, or has Chubb advanced any monies? I had heard from Megan that there was an advance that was anticipated from Chubb to get work started or to get stuff going under an emergency, or?
Not that we're aware of, no. Not that we received.
Would Peter Rowland know the response to that?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay, I thought she had mentioned it at the audit committee, that's why
I remember that from a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't see the money come in.
okay, thank you.
I think Laura and then, was it Eric?
So just related to this, I note in the comptroller's report, there's an exclusion apparently for asbestos under our insurance policy. So my understanding would be then that items 2 and 3 would not be covered by insurance, and I just would like confirmation of that. It mentions, in addition to asbestos, lead paint as well. I don't know if there's a way to break out the two.
Yeah, I just saw that in the agenda from Megan too, from your last meeting. We can break out the charges if Megan needs it, so, but that's the first that we heard of it too.
So maybe I can just ask a question, clarifying question. You know, my understanding from one of the meetings was that there may be parts of the total cost that would not be covered due to abatement asbestos, but not the entire amount, right? We're just talking about a subsection of all these costs. Is that correct?
I'm not too familiar with it, but specifically my understanding was that the abatement cost, not the overall incident, but the abatement costs would not be covered.
And the abatement costs.
But I'm only reading that from Megan's report from,
Okay.
to the VT audit
And
committee.
just for the benefit of the public, because they may not be looking at these sheets, although they are posted, the abatement cost, is that 90,000, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that is an actual cost, and the others are estimates from Warner?
Yeah, the actual cost came in at like 88,000 and change.
And what about the 17,000 for the testing? I mean, we can clarify this. It's just a new information. I just wanted to be sure that the people were aware that we have a $100,000 deductible, and then we have to cover the items that are excluded from our policy.
Yeah, I'll defer to Megan.
Any other discussion? Okay. Do we want to do a roll call vote on this, or are there any objections to? Yes, okay, Nisha, can you call the roll?
Harry, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Karen?
Abstain?
David?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Dan?
I'm a yes.
Leslie Tarkington?
I'm a yes.
Leslie Moriarty?
Yes.
Jeff Framer?
Yes.
Bill Drake?
Yes.
Miriam Cruiser?
Yes.
And Stephen?
Yes.
It's 11:01.
Did you want to? Okay, thank you, okay. Next item is ED6, Board of Ed, it's $235,000. It's an interim appropriation for the print shop restoration.
And you move that?
I move that.
And I will second that motion.
Thank you.
Mr. Leviton separated equipment and supplies into two requests and clarified, working with Mr. Geiger, that this item, ED5, is a capital request for machine.
ED6.
86, absolutely. 86, I'm sorry. Is a capital request for machines and equipment for full print shop operation. A subject to release condition was proposed by schools administration, modified by budget committee members, and is mutually proposed. Mr. Levitin mentioned that they have a meeting in the upcoming week with Mr. Romano and Mr. O'Hurley of the town's Building Construction and Maintenance Division to discuss possible relocation options for the BOE print shop. The options for restoration were read off by Mr. Levitin, as well as the proposed conditions on print shop operation and location if applicable. The options of rebuilding if they go that route, keeping the shop in-house at Havemeyer, or moving the print shop operation to Town Hall will be discussed at the meeting with BC&M next week. Next week is probably this week. And so the committee voted unanimously to appropriate $235,000 together with a recommended condition as a non-routine matter, and I will read the condition. Subject to release upon review and acceptance by the BET of a report providing a financial and operational analysis of outsourcing the print shop operation, an action plan for the print shop function, and a proposed permanent location for the print shop operation, if applicable.
Okay. Any discussion? Karen?
Again, sorry, I wasn't present at the Budget Committee meeting, so I'm sorry if these have been covered. But for the replacement equipment, again, you have estimated costs. Are these estimates or are they actual costs based on either a supplier or other vendors?
Actual estimates based on cost from the supplier.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay. I would note, I think that here we're going to vote on the appropriation with the condition. I think we can do that as one vote. I'd be-
Proposed that way.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay. Nisha, can you call the roll?
Sure. Stephen, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Miriam?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Leslie Moriarty?
Yes.
Leslie Tarkington?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. David?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Harry?
Yes.
12-0-0.
Excellent, thank you. That motion passes 12-0-0 with the condition. Next item, ED7, Board of Ed, $40,000 interim appropriation printing supplies. I'll move that.
I'll second that motion. So the report from the Budget Committee, this request is for operating costs to replace the print shop office furniture, equipment and setup, and inventory and supplies. These are operating supplies for the print shop restoration, whether in full or partially in hybrid. The committee was advised in response to a question that the property insurance is covering certain interim costs of operation. So the committee voted unanimously to appropriate the $40,000 together with the recommended condition as a non-routine matter. So once again, I will read the condition. Subject to release upon review and acceptance by the BET of a report providing a financial and operational analysis of outsourcing the print shop operation, an action plan for the print shop function, and a proposed permanent location for the print shop operation, if applicable.
Any discussion or questions?
I
Oh,
second it.
yeah. Karen?
Can I ask, the supplies that we've lost or paper, printer, whatever, binders, et cetera, why are we asking for monies now for these things when we don't even know whether we're going to have the print shop there? Are they being used now for other purposes? Or I guess my question is, can it wait? Or I guess I'm.
Yeah. It's good. It's a fair question. Yeah, I think with the budget committee, we had the same question. The thought process here was submitting these together. We originally submitted them as 275 with one full request. Roland and I met to break them out this way based on the way that they should be accounted for, which does make more sense. The thought here is that since we're doing the condition and we're going to have to come back, it'll be appropriated with the same condition on it. And then if we're going to rebuild, we'll have the funds to start rebuilding the pieces there, if that is the decision to go with that analysis.
I guess
These
my-
are not being, there is some use now, but there's really not anything like this. This is specific to the rebuilding of the print shop.
Okay, I guess my question then would be, you have to come back anyway, so why not come back and ask for the appropriation then?
RTM.
Well, the RTM meets in June, July, or whatever, June.
Good. But maybe the question to Blaze.
Yeah. Can I? So I think that ideally, kind of to the point of that the funds are appropriated but conditioned. So I think it's just more of a process. If we decide there's wait times with furniture and the equipment, if we're just going to do that, I think the thought was that it's in one package, ready to go, so that we can execute it, if that's the route we're going. That's it.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Nisha, can you call the roll on that?
Harry?
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Karen?
I'm abstaining on this.
David?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Dan?
I'm a yes.
Leslie Talkington?
Yes.
Leslie Moriarty?
Yes.
Jeff Framer?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Miriam?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
1101.
Okay, that motion passes 1101 with the condition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item, item 3, is the assessor's report. Our assessor, Lauren Elliott. Thank you for joining us.
You know this one works. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the BET. I'd like to present the assessor's report for April 2023. First of all, I put the grand list totals for the grand list of 2022. I included those in my report again, as we had a slight reduction to them, as the Board of Assessment Appeal had to reconvene for one residential hearing. The hearing was filed on time, but the Board of Assessment Appeals failed to, I guess, properly notify the owner of a hearing. That being said, the reduction was only $108,000 off the total grand list, but the current totals that you have there now are final totals after the Board of Assessment Appeals. Okay? Income and expense reports were sent out last week to all commercial and industrial properties that, property owners who lease their space. Those are going to be due back this year by June 1st. The Seniors and Disabled Program, we are currently in the midst of their application period. The period ends on May 15th. By the end of this week and next week, we will be calling all seniors who have not yet applied, that are required to apply this year. We will be calling them. We are required by law to send them out a letter by April 30th if they have not appeared and have not reapplied. But hopefully we'll get all our seniors in, as we usually do, in a timely fashion. Anybody have any questions for me this evening?
Leslie Talkington.
So Lauren, has anyone returned, any seniors returned their application yet, or is it just too early in the process?
Oh, no, we have a majority of them in already, and we're entering them in right now, so we'll have a count by the end of the week, so we'll know exactly who we need to follow up with. What also happens is, as the seniors come in, sometimes they forget a piece of documentation, a statement that we need, so it's kind of a continuing process. I don't have a number for you yet, if that's what you're asking for, but we have a majority of them in already.
And will there be any problem with you completing that process prior to our establishing the mill rate the following Monday? I know it's a really close call because theirs are due the 15th.
They're due on May 15th. You actually have to set the mill rate before I can actually determine the credits. So you'll set the mill rate, and by the end of that week, I should have all the credits of it known by then.
Thank you.
So Lauren, would you mind, just for residents and seniors in particular, just remind everybody of kind of what income thresholds qualify for that, for the senior tax relief?
So it depends upon which program you're filing for. The state, I believe, the total, I'm doing this off the top of my head, I hope I get it right. The state, I think, was $48,000 for a married couple. I believe our senior for the local was $78,000.
Thank you. And the deadline's May 15th, correct?
May 15th, correct.
Thank you.
And Lauren, can you just refresh everybody's memory as to if somebody applies, how long that is good for? Is it
Just the property, there is a requirement, well, it's not a requirement, but you can file for 2 years. It's a biannual filing. So if you file 1 year, you don't have to file for the next. However, you are certainly able to, if by chance your income has changed substantially in the interim, you're allowed to file annually if it's to your benefit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to accept the
So I-
assessor's report?
I move that we accept the assessor's report.
I second it.
Was Laura, were you second? I thought, did you have your hand up? Were you seconding? No? Okay. Jeff, Leslie Talkington, Jeff Raymer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we, unanimous.
Any objections to passing out with unanimous consent? Okay. Thank you. That passes with unanimous consent. Thank you, Lauren. Item 4, Controller's Report. Pete Minarski, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, BET members. I have the monthly American Rescue Plan, ARPA Act. The monthly report, the expenses go up and the cash balance goes down, which is a good thing. And you can see that we've collected or earned $451,499 of interest, and the rates continue to be pretty good as far as earning money on the balances. The budget process culminates in a couple weeks with the evening with the RTM to vote on the budgets, and then May 15th, we have to set the mill rate. And the budget process will be done, and we'll start all over again. The annual audit, at the audit committee, I gave an update. I sent an email request to the partner for RSM. He did not commit as to another extension. He's shooting for April 30th. If not, it'll go slightly above April 30th. And we should have our annual audit presentations. This year would be unique in that we would be completing the old year at the same time we're preparing for the new year, which has never been done before in Greenwich. One final comment, and I'll open the questions. The retirement board is in the middle of 2 RFPs. We've basically completed the RFP for the OCIO, the Outsourced Chief Investment Officer. I can't disclose the name. We rated and picked a vendor. It's before the purchasing department and the law department. And according to Section 208A, some of you were not here 6 years ago, the retirement board and, well, I should say back then, the law committee and the BET Investment Advisory Committee and all in the BET all approved that per charter, the vendor, which was Neuberger Berman at the time. The second RFP, Ms. Cruiser, Mr. Wasek and I are having interviews with 3 finalists for the actuary. The retirement board per charter also hires the actuary, but the BET also gets involved at the audit committee, with the OPEB and the retirement board actuary. So that's where we are. I'll open up to any questions in the controller's report.
Karen?
Pete, I noticed that Nathaniel Witherell in the Greenwich Public Schools business office now has credit card payments over. We've opened up accounts for them, I guess. Will they be absorbing the credit card fees, or will they be passing on those fees to
The patients,
patients?
they will be absorbing.
Nathaniel
it.
Witherell will be
Yes,
passing on the
yeah.
fees to the patients?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that was actually one of Mr. Simon's last acts when he was the chairman. He coordinated that with Natasha and cleared it with the agency. But that would be charged not to us, to the users.
Any other questions? Okay, can I get a motion to accept the controls report?
So
Leslie?
moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Leslie Talkington, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Can we accept that with unanimous consent? Okay, that passes 12-0-0. Next item, item 5, Treasurer's Report.
The Treasurer's Report, as of March 31st, 1 or 2 highlights. You could, if you go to the second part of the back of the Treasurer's Report, The OPEB Trust is doing well. For the year, they've earned over $3 million with an opening balance of 38.9, which is a lot better than the retirement board. Different allocation, investment mix. There was one other, the capital non-recurring, as you all recall, that we took $4 million out for next year's budget, and this year we took $8 million. So you can see the balance at 8.6 would be -4 come July 1st. That 8.6 will go up slightly as we close out the Z Fund capital projects. I think we owe you one more. We're working on numbers for the sewer maintenance fund for the May meeting, and we'll do an analysis on the funding from the sewer maintenance fund. Any questions on the treasurer's report?
Okay, and a motion to accept it?
I move that we accept the treasurer's report.
Do we have a second? I'll second. Motion by Leslie Tarkinen, second by Leslie Moriarty. Any objections? Okay, that passes 12-0-0. Thank you, Mr. Minorski. Next item is old business. Vote on estimator for Old Greenwich School construction. Just a little background. At our last meeting, regular meeting, we did send out a draft. We had a short discussion, and the determination was to defer the discussion decision until the April meeting. Any discussion?
Do you want me to move it first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yes, yeah.
Yep, I'll make the motion to approve the
Okay.
estimator project for Old Greenwich.
Do I have a second? Steven Selp, seconds. Discussion? Laura?
I just have one comment in the opening paragraph. We give a source for the enrollment report of the October 22, which I'm assuming is the BOE enrollment report. But when we talk about the 72,000 gross and the 44,000 net square feet, I just think we should give the source. I think it's the KG&D
Okay.
Facilities Master Plan of 2019, but let's just note that as
Fantastic.
such.
Great, is that okay? Any objections to including that? Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Oh, Jeff Raymer.
In the numbered paragraph 2, the last clause says, include public schools in your analysis. I'm not sure why I would be interested in knowing cost figures on things other than public schools, particularly, I mean, not construction in the private sector or something of that sort. It seems to me it has quite a different cost scale to it. I feel like it was just deflect us on material which is not particularly relevant. Why wouldn't we limit it to public schools?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think the idea is to also get a full analysis, not only of public schools, but also independent schools in the area. There's been a significant amount of construction that has been done more recently with some of the independent schools. One thing also to note is that because they also do not go for the state reimbursement, the independent schools, obviously, because they're private, their cost structure and their way of getting funding is obviously through the parents. So there potentially could be more accountability in some of their funding. So I think it's a good idea to look at both independent and public. They're both schools. The idea is not to compare it to commercial buildings, but just limit it to school buildings.
Okay, well, it doesn't say, I'm sorry, may I?
Yes, Jeff?
Sorry. It doesn't say to limit it to school buildings. And I don't mean to persist, I don't mean to be argumentative, but it seems to me that on public construction, there are a few other things which burden the construction process and produce some cost factors that don't exist for construction in a private school. The nature of the labor scale that you're paying is certainly a big one, but there's others as well. The necessity for bonding and performance bonds and the like are also, I believe, different. I'm not sure I'm competent to describe all the ways in which it's different. I just feel like if I end up with cost information on 10 projects, only one of which is a public school, I'll have had this fellow or company doing a lot of work on material which, at least for me, is not relevant, I would probably find most relevant the comparables that he's finding from other public school construction, most particularly in the state of Connecticut, and that too is not mentioned in this paragraph. I would have rather have seen this, than at a minimum to say, include primarily public schools and primarily public schools in Connecticut. I would have preferred that, but perhaps not the will, that's not the will of the majority, I don't know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Leslie?
I just want to add to Jeff's comments because the prior draft specifically referenced private schools, and that was one of the changes that I had recommended, is to delete the reference to private schools specifically for the issues that Jeff had just mentioned, that they're different animals, right? They have different requirements with the prevailing wage, with insurance and bonding requirements, and that's not really, that wouldn't be comparable to what the town would need to move forward with. And so I'll make a motion to change the language in item number 2 to say, please share recent comps of similarly sized renovations and new school constructions for public school projects.
Primarily in Connecticut.
Not primarily.
Can I?
I would just, thank you, Leslie. I mean, I think that, to me, I think it's worded in, to me, in an appropriate way. I mean, I think one reason why, I think we all understand that public construction is different, I mean, for all the reasons mentioned, but in terms of the data sample, there is, as we know, a lot of construction in Greenwich and in our neighboring towns, so I would not want to limit the information and the context to only public schools. I think we understand that public and private construction is different for the reasons mentioned, and I do believe the wording, as you've edited it, does do that. So I get the point. I'm not sure I'm going to support that motion because, we don't want to exclude information on private schools either because they're in our town.
Didn't exclude, it said include primarily, was their wording.
Yeah, I'll just make 2 points. One, I think public school construction in Connecticut is under an incredible amount of scrutiny. To only study public school construction comparables would be doing this board a disservice. I think it really, for our purposes, the idea is to understand what does school construction costs look like. I'll give you an example of, I know we just mentioned prevailing wage, PLAs, and some of those agreements are also applicable in private school construction. I think bonding, of course, is not. But the idea that we wouldn't want to look at a similar sized school because it's an independent school within our town, I think it would be doing this town a disservice. But I'll tell you one comment on, for example, Turner Construction, which is the firm we've hired for a Central Middle School, is the same firm that also worked on Greenwich Academy, Greenwich Country Day, Brunswick, to not study those projects by the same construction manager. Again, I don't know why we'd want to not look at how much that same firm that we have just hired to do similar projects or even renovation, or study any kind of costing. We'd want to at least look at it. We can, of course, adjust above and beyond, but I would not support that motion at all. We did agree to Ms. Moriarty's removal of the word independent schools, and addition of, and adding the content of including public schools, and I think the idea is to look at both, to give us the broad picture of both sides.
Jeff?
I generally agree with the remarks of Nisha. It's just the language doesn't say what your remarks are saying. The language being proposed, if you don't like that language, we could consider some other language, but the language that was being proposed that said include primarily public school construction. I don't mind if it goes on to say, but may include also private school construction, particularly in the local community. I mean, I don't mind that at all.
So what are you asking? I'm not clear. Are you requesting that we add the word primary before public? Or?
Primarily, I didn't say primary.
Sorry, primarily before the word public?
Yeah, include primary. I was trying to limit the number of words that are being changed.
Well, I think,
Because wordsmithing with a board of 12 people is always difficult.
I think we want to look at both, Jeff, whether it's 4 public and 2, we have no idea. We just want to look at a full comparative analysis.
So
and-
could I potentially just throw out something that if we can, I think primarily is it, could we have language saying, look at public and independent schools, look at public and, I mean, no, say we're going to look at independent and public schools, but primarily public schools, because I think that's, or does it matter?
Can I, can
That's the
I,
right.
can I suggest something?
Karen?
Include primarily public schools in Connecticut in your analysis, but may include other school construction projects in the Greenwich area.
May I ask
Or-
that Ms. Vesely just read that one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. Include primarily public schools in Connecticut in your analysis, but your analysis may include other school construction projects in the Greenwich area.
Can I'm sorry,
I'm just
yeah.
looking for some compromise language.
I just really, one of the things that, for me, that was really important in including an estimator, this entire process, was really studying public school construction in Connecticut and noting that there was something that was not looking okay, and we know some of these projects are being scrutinized. I really would want to almost study more non-public schools to see how things should be done and can be done. That doesn't, I think we should again look at both just to give us the whole framework. But I do not like the word primarily. I think I'm okay with saying both, include both public and independent schools in your analysis, and just to give us a fair assessment.
As you kindly pointed out, Turner Construction has done the construction, it has been selected in the project that we're doing and has worked for 2 other private schools. So, I mean, I think I would have some confidence that they're bringing the best construction technology to each of those projects. But if they enjoy a cost advantage on their labor scale and a cost advantage on bonding, I don't know whether they do or not. I'm just telling you that the legal requirement isn't there. They may be asked by the schools to do that, but the moment you open the door to something other than public construction, you're seeking to have comparables that aren't comparable. And each of us can take the information that the estimator brings back and can attach such significance to it as we in our individual judgment think is appropriate. But to start with a wording that doesn't encourage them to at least bring to us mostly public school construction, most particularly public school construction in Connecticut, even preferably in Fairfield County. I mean, those are the ones that we would have found to be the most informative. Some private school construction done in Windsor Locks, for me, is going to have very little convincing data to it. For me to be looking at private school construction at GA or Country Day is also going to be of limited value to me. I will go, gee, I wish we could work with the same cost structure that they can work, but we can't. And it is not going to convince me that the cost per square footage is being quoted too high down here because it isn't matching what's being done for a private school somewhere.
Can I just make one more comment and then I'll end? So Jeff, I totally hear you on what the comments that you're making. And I think the idea is not to have comparables that are not equivalent to what we're trying to do. I think the idea really here is to give us a better sense of construction cost. One of the things when, as part of the building committee, when we were interviewing some of these construction managers, architects, all of these vendors, one of the questions I asked all of them was, do you have different pricing and scale structures for private and public? Why do you have separate divisions? And some of those, and I've asked also offline and I've spoken to developers, really there's no difference. There is no difference in labor. I've also spoken to, they have union, same requirements. Bonding is the only one exception, but at the end, the core, if we just kind of think about what are we doing, we're building a building, we're building a school. So the idea that we wouldn't want to study, and again, I agree, a public school in northern part of Connecticut or a private school in the northern part of Connecticut may or may not be relevant, but when you say comparables usually means for an elementary school, look at other elementary schools, both independent and public. For middle schools, look at independent and public, and keep it in the area, right? The objective here is not, and I'm telling you, public school construction is under scrutiny. One of the other big factors you have to think about is reimbursement rates are very different in different municipalities. So for example, like a Norwalk, which has a higher reimbursement rate, you would expect their dollar numbers to come. I know we don't all want to talk about it like that, but the incentive structure is different, right? For vendors and architects and construction managers. It's just a good idea to understand, right? This is what it would look like here, and this is what it would look like here. Just look at both. I'm not saying limit it to one or the other, just look at both comparable equivalent within the area.
Leslie?
So I believe I have a motion on the table, which was to limit it to public schools, and I'd like to move forward on that. I'm not swayed by the comments made by Ms. Aurora. I think that there are a lot of qualitative as well as quantitative factors impacting private school construction, and I don't think it's relevant to what we look at.
I second the motion, by the way.
Okay. Can you just read it one more time, and then we can call the question? Oh,
So it's to make this one sentence, and the sentence will say, "Of similar size renovations and new school constructions for public schools in your analysis."
Okay. I'll take a roll call.
no, I think Laura did you have a question? or comment?
I do, just relating to this. I mean, we're talking about the scope for this estimator, which we're going to go out for bid for. And frankly, one of my concerns with this is I'm not quite sure how readily available this information is for independent school construction. With public projects, it's obviously very well documented. But, I'm not quite sure how this cost estimator is expected to get this information. To me, while I would find it interesting to get that information, I don't know how relevant it would be necessarily, but it certainly would be interesting. I don't know if there's another way to get that information besides using this estimator. Again, the budget for which is $15,000. So I would support Ms. Moriarty's motion, but I would also support if there's another way to get objective information from private schools. If they would share it with us, I would happily receive it and, take it under consideration.
Thank you. Nisha, can you call the question?
Okay, I'll just start with my vote. I'm going to vote no. Harry,
No.
Laura,
Yes.
Karen,
No.
David.
Yes.
I'm a no. Dan,
No.
Leslie Tarkington.
No.
Leslie Moriarty.
Yes.
Jeff Raymer.
Yes.
Bill Drake. No. Miriam.
Yes.
Stephen.
Yes.
It's a 6-6.
Okay, that motion fails 6-6.
I'm going to propose another motion for the second sentence that hopefully people will find palatable. Include, instead of primarily, include comparable public schools in Connecticut in your analysis. And the analysis should also include other school projects in the Greenwich area when available.
I would
there
second
a
that
sec-
motion.
Okay. Karen Fastliotis, seconded by Jeff Raymer. Discussion?
They just, yeah, could
I was asked to read it again. Include comparable public schools in Connecticut in your analysis. And the analysis should also include other school construction projects in the Greenwich area when available. So I think that addresses the concern that you may not be able to get the information, but where it is available for the independent schools, they can use it if they have it, and they would use comparable public schools in their analysis as well.
Okay. Discussion? Okay. Nisha, can you call the roll?
Harry,
Pass for now.
Laura,
Yes. Excuse me, yes.
Karen.
Yes?
David.
I pass for now.
Why did he pass?
I'm thinking about passing too. I'll pass for now also. Dan? All right, Leslie Tarkington.
I'm going to vote no, because I would have liked the word non-public in front of schools in the second clause.
Karen, can you accept non-public?
And I accept as the seconder.
Then I'd vote yes.
Okay. Leslie Moyer, oh, sorry.
Leslie Moriarty.
I'll vote yes.
Jeff Raymer.
Yes.
Bill Drake.
Yes.
Miriam Kreuzer.
Yes.
Stephen.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes also, and I'll start with you again, Harry.
All right, yes.
David.
I abstain.
You abstained, okay. Sorry, okay. And Dan.
I will vote yes.
I think that's 1101.
I'm sorry, what was the?
I think it's 1101. Let me just-
Yep. Okay, that amendment passes 1101. Miriam?
I would just like to add, because we're on this particular number, another amendment to the end of the newly created language that Ms. Faciliotis offered and we agreed to, which is include adjustment for cost escalation / construction inflation to same period as itemized estimate in number 1. So basically a like for like as at the date of the estimate that we're getting for 1.
I would second that.
Can you read that again so I can write it down?
Sure. Include adjustment for cost escalation / construction inflation to same period as itemized estimate.
You
in
gotta go
number 1.
slower.
Oh, sorry, Karen. Include adjustment for cost escalation / construction inflation to the same period as itemized estimate in number 1, in point 1.
Miriam, can I ask you a question on that? Is that okay, Jade? I understand the spirit of your question, but I think one of the concerns I would have with that, unless you can help me clarify, is, when you make, and we saw this in some of the other projects, when you make assumptions on escalation and inflation, it's different depending on who you ask. For example, for this particular project, I think the chair used numbers in 10 or 12% escalation. Somewhere, I can't remember, I'm sorry, off the top of my head, but I know, for example, in our building committee, we were discussing escalation numbers through 26 for our project, and every single construction manager gave us 3%, right? So I understand what you're saying, but I think it's almost better to say, all right, in 2021, this project was built for X, or in 2022, this project was built for Y, and leaving it at that, understanding that there, of course, is always an escalation and inflation aspect to it, but asking an estimator to punch in numbers, I just think everyone's going to have a different frame of reference for that, unless we up front say, we'd like you to use X and Y, which I don't know how we're going to agree to those numbers. So I'd almost not like to have that, just because I think it creates an additional level of a dispute.
Yeah, and just to answer, I can understand why going forward, that would be sort of a debate and discussion. I agree with you. People do have that difference of opinion, even when they're in the business. But the fact is that if we hire an estimator that is a good one, which I'm hoping we will, they will have lived the experience and will have known the cost of the projects that they worked on. And my concern is that anything that was done, and particularly, if we're going to use local private schools, was done a number of years ago under very different circumstances than our lived experience. So the comparison to a project finished in 2020 will have been very different, and we will have that debate and discussion. So I'd rather, if we're going to hire somebody who's a specialist and who has lived this in the world of construction, that they tell us what their lived experience was and what an appropriate estimate is. And to be clear, right, this isn't I said "and to include," so it can be an additional line item, and very explicit what that inflation was, but that their lived experience helps us do a like-for-like comparison. And I think that's kind of only fair, or we will continue to have, what is a debate and discussion over what that inflation was, et cetera.
Can I also, if you don't mind, ask what, is there, because, this has gone back and forth so many times on this committee. I don't know, is there a reason that some of these comments were not brought up before? We've certainly debated, I feel like, this document a lot and made a lot of compromises on it. I don't think anything you're saying is really too controversial, but I personally am very uncomfortable adding it because I'm not sure exactly what the implications of putting that in there. So I don't disagree with the comment that we need to adjust for inflation and escalation. I do agree with that, but what I do fear, again, is taking a prior project, using assumptions of different numbers that we're not comfortable with. The estimate, our objective in the estimate is to look forward and look at projects. The comps are just the comps as is. So when you do comps, even in our business, in a private business, I know you've done them, you don't look at a project from 1992 or 2012 and say, well, this is, you can, no, you don't have to, and because everyone's going to make different assumptions. And I think the point is, the key word here is recent, comparable. Comps are by definition comps, right? So we're not, I think, picking a 5-year-old project during supply demand constraints. We understand. might be different and might, so I just don't know exactly to even think about the implications of what you're adding in. And I just don't think it's fair to just throw in some of these amendments when this document has been floating around for 2 months.
So I'll answer your first question, which is, sometimes when you read a document over and over again, you sort of miss the forest for the trees. So I apologize for having missed the forest for the trees. And now as we're having this discussion, I'm thinking if we're going to do comps versus private schools, I think this is only fair. And to sort of your point, in my business days, I'd look at an equity fixed income portfolio from 3 years ago, and even though the mix was exactly the same, the performance would have been totally different 3 years out. So I'm trying to compare it like for like. So that's the addition. And you're right, apologies for not bringing this up sooner, and it came to me now. And hand on heart, it came to me now.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, I think the intent of this document is that the estimator would provide us a current cost, right, of doing a project now or in the near future. Is that what you're trying to get at?
So number one gets to that, but now we're comparing, right? Number one is give you the estimate of this current project. Number two wants a comparative analysis of other projects. And it's very difficult to compare versus cost and sizing of other projects that were done 3 years ago on face value, unless you know what time period you were in and the lived experience, which is we've had very high inflation. So you can't compare 25 million 3 years ago to a project that is now 35 million, not knowing the lived experience that you probably had on average 10% construction inflation in the last 3 years.
Would you be okay if you just added the word inflation and not escalation? Because inflation is a number we can look up and is well documented. Escalation is very kind of, I would say, much more subjective. If we could just use the word inflation, I think that would be okay.
Construction inflation, I can strike out cost escalation.
No, unfortunately, especially in the last 2 years, there have been lots of episodes where certain components have become extremely expensive because of supply distress. That's not inflation, or not inflation in the sense of checking to see what the CPI is. These are extraordinary costs at a precise moment for steel or plumbing, et cetera.
Jeff.
Can I suggest a compromise? here?
Sorry, if you don't mind, I was just going to say there is such a thing as construction inflation, and that's a printable number that the Fed puts out. So would you feel, not CPI, but with construction inflation?
Sure.
I think that's what needs to say.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, so that was the second part of, so I'm happy to strike out cost escalation, but instead construction inflation, but as defined by the estimator.
So,
As the
I
second
mean,
director.
Miriam said hand on heart, so I'm going to have to agree with her.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we're already there with this amendment, but the compromise is to show it both ways. Come in with the project cost and what an estimate of construction inflation would have been on that project.
Thank you. But I think if Nisha and Miriam are in the same place on construction inflation, I would vote to stick with that. And obviously, the cost estimator is a professional, and presumably they will provide the best information that they can to get the most accurate number.
And let me just say, I can get to what Leslie was saying, which is change the wording to include explicit adjustment for construction inflation. Right, so then it's a separate, you see the cost of the project in 2020.
Right, you just write, you're going to see both, you're going to write the
see both.
assumptions, that's
Perfect.
fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Laura?
I have no problem with this additional language, but, I have to say, hand to heart, there's probably other things we haven't thought of that we're going to think of. And I have to believe, there's a sentence in number 4 that says, their work, their estimate should clearly identify their assumptions and methodology. So I'm assuming the project manager is going to be working with this professional, and they're going to identify what are the key assumptions that are driving it, because don't forget, on some of these items, there'll be work being done by the Old Greenwich Building Committee that may perhaps have different information. So we're going to want to try and understand what's the baseline, what are the driving assumptions. So I don't want to overthink this. I'm happy that language has been resolved, but, I just want to take a step back and say, the comparative analysis is interesting, but I think what's really going to be important are other aspects of this for part project.
And just as a comment on that, I think that certainly, there are going to be 2 liaisons to this, and, to this cost estimate. And I've talked to Stephen, who's on the Old Greenwich Building Committee, and he will be one of the two. So in the sense of just making sure we have that connectivity and the most recent information, I think we'll have a process to help the liaisons work with Pete to get in any information to them. Okay? Can we call the question on this amendment?
You have another.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not on this amendment, but I just, from a practical standpoint, I think it's important this get into the packet, and I think it's important that the policy that we discussed at the March meeting get into the packet as well, because that has not been posted yet.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Laura. Can you call the question on the amendment?
Can I just ask a procedural question? Jeff, were you the seconder on Miriam's? And you are okay with the proposed?
I did indicate that I accept the changes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't hear that.
Okay. I'm a yes, and I'll start with you, Harry.
I'm going to vote no, thank you.
Laura?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Leslie Tarkington?
Yes.
Leslie Moriarty?
Yes.
Jeff Raymer?
Yes.
Baldrick? Yes. Miriam?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
11-1-0.
Okay. Okay. Jeff,
Sorry to be the thorn in your side.
next time, we're not going to include you on the small, on the more select group that actually saw this document for weeks.
It is just so much more fun to do that here today. Take a look at the language at the end of paragraph number 1. I've never served on a building committee, but to the best of my limited understanding, the costs get framed out by trade. So the foundation is so and so much, the masonry work is so and so much, the steel is so and so much, the flooring is so and so much, the painting, et cetera. It's done by trade. And it quite rightly says include an estimated list for each requested scope. But then comes a parenthetical, which I think is meant to define the word scope, and it says accessibility, security, and infrastructure. I can see real value in perhaps getting separate components for what was the cost of accessibility or what's the cost of security. But for the estimator, I have a feeling that that's an exceedingly difficult task, that the cost of security lies in a few dollars that are in the masonry, a few dollars that are in the steel. They don't jump out into separate categories. They have to be teased out, ferreted out of each and every one of those trades. I don't know if the estimator would be able to do it at all, but if he could do it at all, it's going to be a fairly tedious and difficult process. I don't know exactly what to propose here. I have some inclination to delete those 3 words in the infrastructure, in the parenthetical. Maybe it's worthy of it being a separate paragraph number altogether if you're keen on it. But I just think that you've not focused on the fact that the estimator will be all set to, he'll figure out on a given size of building roughly what the masonry would be, roughly what the roofing would be, et cetera. He's not going to understand, okay, but how much of each of those items was for accessibility, how much was for security, and how much was for infrastructure, whatever that means.
I mean, I'll just, Jeff, I'll make one comment. I do think this is how it was described in the ed specs, but I would also say this is a request. If an estimator is unable, you know, and again, this is a conversation that will occur between the estimator and Mr. Minarski, but if there are things that they're not able to deliver, given the cost or the bid or something, you know, the proposal, I mean, I'm sure they would do that. I don't know, to me, that's a reason not to include it.
So tell you what, I'm
you have a second, by the way?
I'm persuaded by
Did you have
that.
a- Jeff,
I'm
did you
not
have a-
making any motion.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Okay. Discussion, or can we call a question? Oh, Leslie.
I don't have changes. I just want to make a statement, and I am going to support this project, but I do it with a little hesitancy. First, the primary reason is that I believe this is a waste of town assets, a waste of town money. The Old Greenwich Building Committee has been given this exact same assignment. They're moving forward with the renovation project, and we'll have a cost estimate, they expect, by early June. And the Board of Ed, at their last meeting, authorized the building committee to develop an estimate for a new school. So I'm not sure of the value of spending even 10 cents on the BET doing an independent estimate. So in this particular case, I think it is totally wasted money. The only reason I'm supporting this particular project is that this BET made it a condition of of the 1.1 million planning money, even though the Board of Ed has no ability to force the BET to do this work. We put it in there as a condition for the Board of Ed to get the money. So in essence, you're tying the Board of Ed's hands and you're tying BET members' hands who may not believe this is a good use of funding. So I just wanted to get those thoughts out there in the public.
Okay. Karen?
Yeah, I'd just like to address that also. This is a pilot program, and it's designed to help the BET understand whether or not look, the estimators that the building committees come up with are basically paid by the construction manager or whoever is doing it. It's not necessarily an independent analysis, although, hopefully it is. But I think that this would give the BET some sort of guidance, and we can also have a conversation with the Board of Ed and to talk about, is it really this much? Should it be that much? At least we would have the information to have that conversation. The other way of doing it is to just rely on the information. And, we have a fiduciary duty to our taxpayers and to the townspeople to make sure that we are considering all these things. So I don't think that this is a waste of money. I think that it's necessary, and as fiduciaries, I think we should be doing this.
So I'm going to make a
David?
very quick comment here. I am going to vote no. I voted no for the pilot altogether. And I think the discussion itself is sufficient support for voting no. The level of ambiguity, lack of clarity, or the nature of these estimates is so obvious that, to me, it really results in a dueling estimate. You've got the building committee that's been ordained to do this work, and now you're going to have some dueling set of numbers that are only going to create confusion, just as this conversation in the last half hour. I do commend the body for having a good, honest discussion on this, and the give and take is encouraging. It's good, but I can't vote for this. I think the BET is usurping authority here that it should not be doing. We're not in the business of construction management. We're in the business of creating budgets and doing finance work. I think that the new building aspect of this is particularly disturbing. It's like saying, give me an estimate to build a new stadium, for 60,000, well, what kind of stadium? What amenities? There are no ed specs. There's no anything, and so the value of whatever comes out will be de minimis. In fact, negative in my view. So I'm opposed. I realize Ms. Moriarty said that there is a condition built into the funding for the A&E work that requires this, and so I may be the only vote that's no. But I wanted to just explain why I was going to vote no.
All right, thank you, David. I'll just make two comments. I do intend to support this. This is a pilot program, and I certainly appreciate that when something's a pilot program, we truly don't know the implications of the work that we're doing. But certainly, I think it's something very worthwhile. I would also note that in terms of an analysis of a new construction, that's again something the Board of Ed voted overwhelmingly to request. And lastly, this should be no surprise to anybody. I have had discussions with the OGS chair and building committee chair and the liaison. And, I indicated weeks ago that this is something that was likely that the BET would be looking to pursue. And there were no objections, there were no concerns, and maybe there are now, but I've certainly not heard them. So, look, I do understand that there are concerns, but I really do think we're going into what David said. I think the discussion today was collegial. I think it was cooperative, and I just have to hope that we really get this right so that this project, reflects well on the BET and on the town. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of a more hopeful view on this, and I do intend to support that. So Nisha, do you mind calling the roll?
Sure. Harry, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Laura?
I'm going to abstain.
Karen,
Yes.
David.
No.
I'm a yes. Dan,
Yes.
Leslie Tarkington.
Yes.
Leslie Moriarty,
Yes.
Jeff Raymer,
Yes.
Bill Drake,
Yes.
Miriam Cruiser,
Yes.
Stephen.
Yes.
It's 10-1-1.
Thank you. The item passes 10-1-1. Okay. The next item is item 10. We have 3 pieces of new business listed. First, and all of these came out of the Audit Committee. So on the, I would like to move the Nathaniel Witherell write-off of June 30th, 2022 outstanding receivables. Do I have a second?
What?
Okay.
I guess.
Okay. Harry?
Yeah, I think everybody has seen the report from Grassy, which I unfortunately don't have in front of me, but everybody has, that shows that the recommended write-off, which is not to say that it's not going to be collected, but the recommended write-off is $3,118,381. In looking at the spreadsheet, which maybe Pete can help me on this, but the total effect on cash, including the reconciliation of munis to matrix and the accounts receivable write-off and a reserve of $150,000 for, I'm sorry, for credit balances, the total effect to cash is $4,070,499,000. I think I have that right, Roland?
You do.
Yeah,
I think Roland might have maybe suggested rounding the numbers, if that's okay.
that's okay with me, I think,
What
yes.
would, so it would be 3,118,000 for the receivables write-off, and then the reserve for credit balance would still be 150, and then the 800,000 is what, 802 or 802?
Yeah, so it's a total of $4,070,000 even. So I recommend that the audit committee recommends by a vote of 400, that the BET accept the report from Grassy and the write-off number of $4,070,000.
Okay. I believe 11 members of the 12-member board did attend the entire audit committee this afternoon, so I think we're
good on that.
Any discussion or comments? Okay. Can we approve that by 12-0, by unanimous consent? Okay. That's 12-0-0. Okay, the next item is vote to approve funding for the Board of Education and Nathaniel Witherell payroll internal control audits up to $28,000 each. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think that's D.O. David Weisbrod.
That's right.
Okay. Harry?
Yeah, this also was taken up by the audit committee this afternoon. Interestingly, the chairman of the board of Nathaniel Witherell welcomes this and believes that it will be helpful to their process of trying to restructure Nathaniel Witherell. But the audit committee voted 4-0-0 to recommend that the BET spend up to $28,000 for each of the funding of the Board of Education and Nathaniel Witherell payroll, internal audit controls, internal control audits, and to proceed with that as a new appropriation out of the existing consulting funds.
Okay.
So it's an addition to the normal cycle of audits, but it's anticipated that this will be the first of an annual look at payroll controls in all town departments.
Before we do discussion, Pete, do you have anything to add to that?
Just to be clear, the recommendation or the request came from the Human Resources Director. and supported by the town administrator. And originally, they wanted to do the town-wide, and I said it'd be cost prohibitive. And to follow up on Mr. Fisher's comments, this is don't want to say it's a pilot program, it's the onslaught, the setting up of an annual review of at least 2 areas, payroll areas throughout the town to be selected each year. As you all know, if you did a risk matrix, whether it's public or private, payroll would jump to the top as far as risk, as far as audit risk. So this is requested from the HR department, and it's the start of an annual cycle.
Thank you, Pete. Any further discussion? Okay. Can we approve this by unanimous consent? Or do we want to vote? Okay. That's 12-0-0. Thank you. Harry, I understand that the third item, the audit committee did not move, and that's going to be taken up on May 2nd. You're going to review that again?
That's correct. We realized that this needed to be rewritten a bit, and Pete's going to lead that effort, and we'll have it back at our May 2nd audit committee meeting. So expect it to reappear at the May BET.
Okay. Next item is the chair's report. In interest of brevity, I'm going to pass on that today. Item 12 is approval of the BET regular committee meeting minutes for March 27th and the public hearing on the 29th. I do understand that there are a few comments that are, I think, can be readily handled, but in the interest of time, I would like to defer those to the next meeting, so we don't have to draft it on the fly. Any objections to that? No. Okay. And with that, I would, do we have a motion to
Move we adjourn.
Second?
Okay. Harry Fisher, Miriam Cruiser, thank you all very much. Thanks again, Pete and Roland, for all your help. And this meeting is adjourned. Any objections? To
No.
adjourn? Okay.
Well done, 1 hour. Good. Well, almost.